Look at this shit. Look at this stupid bullshit. Restarting in 12 minutes and 58 seconds. This shit comes up on my computer every single day.
Windows 11 has a couple of requirements that I find horrifically problematic.
January 2025. Windows 11 adoption hits 31%, down from 35% 3 months earlier. Microsoft's own internal projections had called for 50% by now. They missed by 19 percentage points. That's not a rounding error. That's a catastrophe. But here's the number that's actually keeping Microsoft executives up at night. Windows 10 support ended officially on October 14th, 2024. And right now, 400 million people are still running it. 400 million users choosing to operate on an unsupported, unpatched operating system rather than upgrade to Windows 11. These aren't tech-illiterate users who don't understand the risk. They understand it perfectly. They'd rather take the security hit than deal with what Microsoft built. Linux desktop usage jumped from 3.2% to 4.8% in just 6 months. Mac enterprise sales climbed 47% year over year. Chromebook business shipments surged 89%. This was the predictable result of a company that stopped caring about the people actually using its product. Bill Gates hasn't run Microsoft since 2008, but things got so bad that executives reached out to him anyway. He got pulled into emergency sessions because the people inside Microsoft don't have answers. When a company is calling in a founder who's been gone for over a decade just to make sense of a crisis, you know things are worse than the press releases are letting on. Let's go back to where this actually started. September 2024. Windows 10 approaching its end-of-life date. Microsoft begins the upgrade push. Pop-ups appearing daily, notifications stacking up, upgrade now, support ends soon. Your PC needs Windows 11. Most users clicked remind me later. Some actually tried to upgrade. And that's where the first wall appeared. Rachel Morrison is a freelance graphic designer in Portland. She built her PC in 2018. That machine handles everything she throws at it. Adobe Creative Suite runs without a hitch. When Windows 10 support ended, she tried to upgrade. The error message said the PC doesn't meet Windows 11 requirements. She dug into why. No TPM 2.0 chip. Her motherboard, purchased brand new in 2018, didn't include it as standard. Microsoft's official recommendation was to buy a new computer. Spend $2,500 on new hardware so she could run a different operating system on top of it. A computer that runs everything she needs perfectly is suddenly not good enough because of a chip she doesn't have. She didn't buy a new computer. She spent 2 weeks learning Linux Mint. Now she runs GIMP instead of Photoshop. She doesn't miss Windows, actually prefers what she has now. No forced updates, restarting her machine mid-project. No Microsoft account tracking her activity. Her computer finally feels like her computer again, and that story is playing out millions of times across the world. TPM 2.0. Trusted Platform Module. A security chip that stores encryption keys. Microsoft made it a hard requirement for Windows 11, not recommended, required. And TPM 2.0 didn't become widely standard until around 2016. Anything before that, incompatible. Microsoft's own data confirmed that over 52% of Windows 10 devices couldn't pass the requirements. They built an upgrade that more than half their users couldn't take. Workarounds existed. Registry edits, installation flags, boot media tricks that let you install Windows 11 on unsupported hardware. Microsoft patched them, users found new ones. Microsoft patched those too. A company spending engineering resources specifically to stop people from using its own software. Let that land for a second. Rob Braxman is a programmer who's been in this industry for 4 decades. He says the TPM requirement was never purely about security. The PC hardware market had stagnated. Nobody needed new machines. All of them needed a reason for people to open their wallets. Microsoft gave them one. Artificial obsolescence enforced through a software requirement. But here's where it gets darker. The TPM chip contains a unique hardware identifier tied to your Microsoft account. You can't change it. You can't remove it. Third-party applications can query it through standard APIs with very few restrictions. Your computer now carries a permanent tracking identifier that Microsoft controls, and you have no meaningful way to opt out. Jennifer Patel runs an accounting firm in Ohio with 12 employees. She outfitted her office with Dell workstations in 2018. No TPM 2.0. Microsoft said those computers are done. Her options were spend another $18,000 on hardware that does identical work, or keep running Windows 10 with no security patches. She chose neither. She migrated the entire office to Ubuntu. Zero in licensing costs. Windows 11. Home will not complete installation without a Microsoft account. That's not a nudge. The setup process stops. It waits. You either log in, or the installation doesn't proceed. The option for a local account, something that's existed in Windows since the beginning, quietly removed from the default flow. David Chen is a software engineer who paid $2,200 for a high-end laptop in early 2024. He's used local accounts his entire career, keeps his work contained. He spent 2 hours finding a workaround through the command prompt. Microsoft patched it 6 weeks later. New workaround appeared. Microsoft patched that one too. He made a decision. His next computer is a Mac. Not because the hardware failed, not because the software crashed, because Microsoft decided he doesn't get to control his own login on a machine he owns. And the account isn't just about logging in. Once it's connected, the entire ecosystem starts pulling. Every path through the operating system routes back toward recurring revenue. Windows stopped being software you own and became a platform Microsoft uses to sell you things continuously. Sarah Kim is a high school teacher in Austin who paid $800 for a Windows 11 laptop. Within a week, she was seeing ads in the Start menu recommendations in File Explorer, OneDrive storage upgrade prompts, Microsoft 365 banners plastered across her interface. She paid for the hardware. She's being advertised to on the operating system that came with it. She returned the laptop, bought a Chromebook, and hasn't looked back. Microsoft's response to that kind of feedback has been to keep the ads in and make them harder to remove. Then Microsoft made one more bet that pushed users from frustrated to furious. They went all in on AI, $13 billion into OpenAI. That's a commitment that needs to be justified to shareholders every quarter. So AI started appearing everywhere in Windows 11. Copilot embedded into the operating system. AI features inside Word, Excel, Outlook, Paint, shipping whether users wanted them or not because the investment needs to show returns. The flagship feature was called Recall. Windows takes a screenshot of your screen every few seconds, and AI indexes those screenshots. Later, you can search your own computer history in plain English. Microsoft marketed it as AI-powered memory for your PC. Security researchers got access immediately and found exactly what you'd expect. The screenshot database stored locally with almost no meaningful encryption. Any malware with local access could read the entire thing, every password field that appeared on screen, every bank statement you opened, every confidential document, every private conversation, sitting in a queryable database with barely any protection. Security researcher Kevin Beaumont called it the worst privacy disaster in modern computing and demonstrated how an attacker could pull months of screen history in minutes. Microsoft pulled Recall before it launched widely, brought it back later as opt-in with stronger protections. But the damage was already done. Because once you know Windows was designed to screenshot everything you do, the question you can never fully answer is, how do I know it's actually off? Marcus, Webb is a solicitor in London. He handles confidential client matters where attorney-client privilege is not optional. When he learned about recall, he understood the legal exposure immediately. He migrated his entire firm off Windows. 22 lawyers, all new MacBook Pros. A significant cost he absorbed willingly just to run an operating system he could legally trust. Microsoft lost that business not because of a competitor's better marketing, but because they built surveillance infrastructure into their OS and expected professionals to just live with it. And beyond recall, Copilot runs constantly in the background, monitoring what applications you're using, watching context, ready to help at any moment. Those monitoring processes don't pause when you're working. They run continuously, consuming CPU cycles and RAM. Which brings us to the performance problem that nobody at Microsoft wants to talk about directly. Windows 11 was supposed to be faster than Windows 10. Microsoft's marketing said so explicitly. Independent benchmarks told a completely different story. Gaming frame rates dropped 5 to 10% on identical hardware. Application launches took longer. The interface felt sluggish in ways Windows 10 never did. The reason isn't mysterious. OneDrive syncing in the background, Copilot monitoring processes running at all times, telemetry collection packaging your usage data, and shipping it out continuously. Your machine's spending its resources on Microsoft's operation instead of your work. Kevin Torres plays Valorant at a semi-professional level in Brazil. Frame rates are not a preference for him. They determine whether he competes or loses. He upgraded to Windows 11 mid-2024. Frame rates dropped from 280 to 245 frames per second. Same hardware, same settings, same game. 3 days of optimization later, disabling Copilot, killing telemetry services, pulling every registry tweak he could find, he got back to 265. Still worse than Windows 10. He moved his setup to Linux with Proton. Got 290 frames per second in testing. Better performance than Windows 11 ever delivered. Microsoft lost a dedicated Windows user because they shipped an operating system that performs worse than the one it was supposed to replace. Here's what Microsoft is telling investors right now. Record cloud revenue. Strong Azure growth. AI integration expanding across the product suite. Everything proceeding according to plan. That narrative has nothing to do with what's happening on the ground. Windows 11. Adoption is falling month over month. Users aren't filing complaints, they're migrating. Every alternative gaining ground while Windows slides. Bill Gates built Windows into the dominant computing platform of a generation. He watched it become the default assumption for a quarter century. Now, he's being pulled into emergency sessions to look at data showing 400 million people would rather run unsupported software than use what his company built. And Microsoft's response has been to push harder in the same direction. Internal documents showed Microsoft actively testing subscription tiers for Windows itself. A basic tier with advertisements, a premium tier that removes ads and unlocks full functionality. Pay monthly or your computer degrades. That is the future they are building toward. The 400 million users still on Windows 10 understand this instinctively. They can feel the difference between software that works for them and software that extracts from them, and they made their choice. An unsupported operating system from years ago serves them better than the current one. That is not a bug report. That is not a feature request. That is a rejection. Trust does not recover the way adoption numbers do. You can patch performance, you can pull a controversial feature, but you cannot undemonstrate to hundreds of millions of people that you view them as a data source and a subscription opportunity rather than a customer worth serving. They already know. The numbers prove they know. If this gave you a clearer picture of what's actually happening behind Microsoft's earnings calls and AI announcements, share it. Because the company is not going to tell you that adoption is falling, that users are choosing unsupported software by choice, that Bill Gates is being called into crisis meetings over a platform he hasn't touched in over a decade. But it's all happening, documented, measurable, and getting worse. Subscribe to see what comes next. Because Windows, dropping below 60% market share isn't a distant warning anymore. It's a direction, and Microsoft is still pointed the same way that got them here.